Okay, folks, so I wanted to share another one of my favorite Soviet books growing up. So this is a collection of stories and novels by Gianni Rodari. If you're Italian, you will know how to pronounce his name correctly, but I think it's pretty close in Russian. But I loved this book growing up. This one was one of my favorite books, and I know I do say that about many different books, but I loved a lot of books growing up. And this is not my childhood copy. I gifted my childhood copy to a dear friend when they departed, and this is another used copy that I got online. And it is in great condition. You can see the imprint of the price, just as on many Soviet books, as I shared before. And this one was published in the year 1987, the year when I was born. And I really, really love the illustration, the love and care with which they made these books. Hopefully you can see some of these little designs. And when I was a child, I would spend literal hours just looking at the little artworks. I loved the fact that they took care to make little illustrations, even with the beginning of each and every single story, of every first sentence, a little picture, and I just loved it so much. I found it so adorable growing up, and I would just spend so much time just looking at those little illustrations, and that entertained me for hours, even before I was able to read. So here's some more of these little illustrations, but there are bigger illustrations as well. And I love this book so much because it shared some of the ideas of communism with me growing up. And even though I did not know what communism was, just look at these illustrations. Aren't they amazing? I just love them so much. I think the attention to detail is so great. And the story that I shared before, a couple years ago maybe, was about this little boy who went to the moon. I thought it was to the moon or to Mars, but it could possibly be a planet that doesn't exist actually. So I'm going to find the story right now. So when I was sharing the story last time, I didn't have access to this book. So this is why I was just trying to remember. I read this book when I was a child, but I'm so glad I got a hold of this copy. And yeah, I think this is the story. I think it is called The Planet of Christmas Trees, Planeta новогодних елок. So I think that was the story. And so the boy did go to just an unknown planet. He didn't go to the moon or to Mars. He just went to the planet that doesn't actually exist in our universe. At least we don't really know a planet like this. And he went to the planet known as Clear, something along these lines. So the word is Yasnaya. I'm going to try and find a translation that's more appropriate for English and put it here. This is the planet that he went to, and this boy did not know about this planet, just like we don't, because it doesn't actually exist. It was made up, and they had communism on this planet. Everything was free. There was great automation and robots. And this boy, he just couldn't wrap his little mind around how it's possible. So there are chapters in this book, and I love how each and every chapter is titled. Hopefully this is translated into English, because I think this is such a sweet story, and if you have children, to see it and read the story with your children, I think can be a great pastime for you and your children. So here is a chapter called Воруй сколько хочешь, which means you can steal as much as you want. Oh, I remember just spending so much time with these books, just reading and just imagining what I would take if I was on that planet. And when he comes to that realization that he doesn't actually need to hoard all these toys and all that wealth, because it's going to be available to him if he needs it. And I remember also being a child and just thinking, well, yeah, I suppose I don't need to hoard all this stuff. If it's available all the time, you can just come and take it. Why hoard it? This is good propaganda, don't you think? I mean, this is how propaganda should be done. It should be written in accessible language. It should utilize natural tendencies of children. And to those of you who say, oh, this is indoctrination of children, we are indoctrinating children. School is a type of indoctrination, and there's nothing wrong with it as long as we actually have children's and humanity's best interests at heart. And we don't. Under capitalism, we care about profit. We don't care about the well-being of these children. We don't care about the well-being of humanity. We care about profit. So why pretend like there is no propaganda now? Most of history, most of literature that we're reading nowadays at schools, it is not meant to teach anyone anything. And even if it does, it is so hypocritical, because we tell children, yeah, look at all these great values, but we don't live these values, and they become very cynical if they grow up with us telling them a set of stories, and then it turns out all to be lies. And when I was growing up with these books and I looked at the lives of my grandparents and my parents, I could see a lot of these things. I'm not saying, again, that my family was some perfect, wonderful family. No, it wasn't. Most definitely wasn't. But I could see a lot of the people striving outside of the family too. I could see people actually trying to do their best to live out those ideals, to live according to these universal principles of humanity. And it is not something impossible. It is not outside of the realm of possibility. And people like Gianni Rodari believe that in that strongly. He was such a great author. I love him so much. I will be reading more about him, but I keep on looking at these illustrations. Just look at how humorous they are. They're so funny. And look at all these people at the beach. Yeah, I'm sharing a little nostalgia moment with you all. I'm being a little sentimental about the days of my childhood, and the smell of this book is really something. It takes me back to my childhood and to all these happy memories. I did read this book in my grandparents' house, which I still live across. You know, they lived in a different apartment complex right across from this little apartment that my parents lived in, and now I keep living in here. And I used to visit them all the time. This is something that I mentioned in the 15-minute city video where I talked about the heritage of the Soviets, that a lot of us would live nearby. You know, we would not necessarily all live in one big house as an extended family, but we had access to grandparents, aunts and uncles often, because we would be living in the same neighborhood. And earlier in the Soviet period, it would be even better, because families often would be able to continue living in bigger houses if they had access to them, and if not, they would be often choosing to live nearby. They had options of choosing. Of course, it wasn't perfect, it wasn't ideal. Some people did struggle, and recently some comrades and I were looking at statistics of, you know, the apartments and housing in the USSR, and we actually came to some very interesting realizations. For example, in Kazakh Socialist Soviet Republic, people actually had greater allowance for living area. So we were assigned 9 square meters per person, and the average within the Soviet Union was 6.1, 6.3, something along these lines. Square meters per person. So we in Kazakhstan had bigger, more spacious apartments and houses in the Soviet Union. And some of the comrades joked that it's because we, the nomads, like our space. We are used to living in the steppes where everything is big. But I think that was probably not connected to this. I'm not sure about that. Honestly, I would love to read these books with children. I used to be able to do that at my workplace. I used to be able to read books with children. I did not read this book because I did not have access to it in English, but I did read a lot of other great, wonderful books, and I probably am going to start seeking out opportunities as well. I do participate in book clubs, but these are mostly with adults. If you can arrange some kind of reading opportunity for children, please do. Please read with children. This is such an important experience for them. Even though I did not have an ideal, perfect childhood, and I was greatly traumatized because I was growing up in the 90s as a neurodivergent child whose needs were not understood by most people around them, I still appreciate it so much that all of these books were shared with me. I found my escape. I found my respite in these books. I really connected with the world and the people around me through books. Books can be a great tool for you to connect with different different generations, different people from all walks of life. And reading fiction can be very much a tool of propaganda and agitation as well. And I do have a ton of book recommendations for younger children, older children, adults. If you're interested, I can start making little lists of commie propaganda books for all ages. Let me know what you think. If you have a book or books from your childhood that you enjoyed and you want to share and you feel comfortable sharing, please do in the comments down below. So this week is just a short little video of me sharing my fond memories with you. Let me know how you've been. I hope you take care of yourself and your community. Consider supporting me on Patreon. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you sometime later.